Alrighty, welcome to the channel. Go ahead and give this video a like, hit the subscribe button before we get into it. I'm going to go ahead and talk about logic and ethics in these next two videos, or in these next two videos. So what we're talking about, in case you didn't see the other videos, is socionics. I want to go through these information elements and functions. I want to describe socionics to the people on my channel. People who are interested in MBTI may think socionics is a little bit too complicated. And I want to get into it, and hopefully I can break it down in a simple format and an easy to understand way. So that's what I'm seeking to do here. What I just went through in the previous videos was extroverted sensation, introverted intuition, extroverted intuition. So what I'm going to be going through in this video is a few things. First off, I'm going to be talking about the difference between the rational and irrational elements, and then I'm going to talk about logic or ethics. Haven't decided which one. I might go over a little bit of both. So to start, what's the difference between rational and irrational elements? Well, these are just terms to describe elements that have been elements. Okay, it's information that has already been processed, essentially, or ordered in a way, rather than information that's just simply perceived as is, right? So for how do I put this? For the logical information, like introverted logic and extroverted logic, this is the arranging or movement of objects. This is affecting an object, right? Whereas the extroverted ethics and introverted ethics are also about objects or people. So essentially, all of these four information elements, the ethics and logic elements, they are information that's been ordered, information that's been processed. Whereas, of course, the other information elements have also been processed, but I wouldn't say they've been ordered. It's a direct perception. So when, as an introverted intuitive base, this is information that I can't directly order or perceive with introverted intuition by itself. So I have introverted logic as a mobilizing element, so I can order it with that. But that primary type of information is not something that's ordered, it's something that's perceived. So that's how all of the other information elements are. All the sensing and intuition elements, or abstract and concrete information. It's all unordered. It's what they call irrational. Whereas rational would be the ones who that have been processed or ordered in some way. So, and I want to clarify, because order is often associated with introverted logic, and while that is one of the ordering elements, the other ones are just ordered in different ways. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So now I want to get into extroverted logic, for logic versus ethics as a primary description or descriptor, and then we'll get into one of the two. Still haven't decided which one yet. But logic versus ethics. Logic I have defined as the observable relationship of an object despite sentimental influence on a subject. So I'm sure you've seen situations where in movies or in your own life where people are like, okay, putting aside how I feel about it, this is what it is, right? That would be a good example of logic over ethics, or the difference between the two. Whereas ethics is information regarding how an object affects the sentiment of a subject. So this is the primary difference between logic and ethics. One being an observable relationship that has nothing to do with how one individual feels about it. whereas the ethics side is a subject's energetic relationship to an object or scenario. Now, one thing I will point out is that there can be crossover here where, I don't want to overcomplicate things, but there can be crossover here. I'm lagging on my, okay. Where, maybe you, like, let's say I'm upset at you and I say, well, I'm just upset at what's happened here, right? That what I would be doing is I'd be externalizing the information. Now it could be seen as a fact, right? And that could be a type of logical information. So my point being that where ethics is defined as information regarding how an object affects the sentiment of a subject, it could also become logical to look at this and say, um, well, I know for a fact that this person is upset about this, and it could be considered logically in a regard. Um, so that is something to consider, um, but mainly when you're trying to type somebody, right? If you were trying to type somebody, you would want to make sure you were careful in places like that. Oh, this is starting to hurt me. Okay. So, perfect. So that's how we're going to start. I'm going to go ahead and go into logic here. Yes. So, for the difference between extroverted logic and introverted logic. So, what introverted logic is essentially, and remember, all the information elements expand and contract, right? So, logic is either expanding or contracting, or sorry, expanding or refining as well. What I call these when they're expanding or refining is logic utility for when logic expands, and logic framework for when logic refines. So, what does this mean? Well, I'm sure you understand or know how. I'm sure you understand formal logic, which is um, maybe a different kind of logic than practical logic, right? This is the primary base of these two, where for introverted logic, it's about refining, right? So it wants to remain internally consistent, or it's seeking consistency. If I say this is true, um, I need to account for this being true as well. Or if I say that these things are independently true, but there seems to be a contradiction, I need to be able to mend that together. Now, the difference between these two and approach is that introverted logic is mainly seeking to create a system of principles in which to approach their decision making. So I'm sure you've heard the one size fits all analogy, right? Which that's essentially what's happening here with introverted logic. It's, well, if I can come up with an approach um, that applies to all scenarios, then or I can account for all these differences, or I can create a set of principles so I can know what would be the best way in which to act. That would be introverted logic. Whereas extroverted logic um, keeps things open-ended. It's focused on what is best in this specific scenario. It doesn't ever come to a basic approach, or saying that this is the primary approach in which I should approach this, or I need to abide by this set of laws or structures, um, which is essentially what introverted logic is laws and structures. So extroverted logic is saying, what's the best thing to do in this scenario? And because of that, it's very much focused on cost-benefit analysis, or the removal of waste and excess, right? Just trying to get to the point and put things in the places that are best in this current situation. So whereas introverted logic is focused on remaining internally consistent, Extroverted logic, especially when it's strong, is seeking to remove waste and choose the most efficient and practical option possible. So that's the difference there. Those are the primary differences between extroverted logic and introverted logic. Let's see. Yeah, so typically, I feel like this is pretty straightforward, to be honest with you. I'm gonna give a few more things to think about though. So, for example, for myself, I'm what you'd call an IEI in socionics, which means I do not have hardly any extroverted logic. It is the blind spot in my personality, whereas introverted logic is the primary focus. So, what does this mean exactly? Well, for someone like me, I seek to, it's not something that comes naturally, but I seek to come to a logical understanding and really wish that I could come to a set of principles, but it's much harder for someone like me to uh, abide by principles. So that is, or to have them worked out, or to know how I should act. Um, but it is something that I seek to achieve, right? Whereas people who, or sorry, my lack of extroverted logic means that I have no sense of what is more practical in one scenario versus another, or in certain situations what is more efficient than another situation. So that is a pretty significant aspect of the two. For someone like me, I don't know. Priorities don't come clearly to me. I don't know what's more important to do first rather than something else. Prioritizing that information is difficult. Seeing what should be done first, or what's more efficient, or how to make something more efficient, or remove excess or waste. I don't even perceive it. I don't even know how it works. I don't even know what to do, how I would approach it. None of that information is clear to me at all. So my logic that I do have is primarily completely centered around being logically and internally consistent. Um, it is not my my stronger elements. It's something that I aspire to be good at and work on, but it's not something that is um, extremely clear or strong. And so that's the basic idea, right? Um, so taking what's logical in a internally consistent sense, and taking what's logical dependent on situations or scenarios, and what's more efficient. So that's the primary difference between these two elements. To be honest with you, I think that pretty much sums it up. Um, they are, of course, connected with ethics in a way. I want to eventually, in case anyone's wondering, I'm putting off explaining how it looks when someone's bad at these things until later. Like if you're an extroverted logic type, I want to go into those types and talk about them specifically. And when we do talk about those types, you'll get a clear depiction of what these types look like without certain types of information. Because I have been focused so primary on the element that I haven't really described how it interacts in a personality as much. So I do want to get into that eventually. But for now, I just want to focus on the information elements at their most essential form. Um, so for there was one more thing I was going to say, which was, oh yeah. So for the logical types, they will oftentimes have difficulty with ethics. That may be expressing emotion, that may be managing their relationships, things like that. That is very difficult for them, or can be very difficult for them, something that they may need help or guidance with. So that is the last thing I want to say about this. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next video. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Like I said in the beginning, go ahead, give this video a like, hit the subscribe button. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Also, I didn't say this, but I'm going to have a Discord link in the description of my videos. So I have a community where a lot of really awesome minds come together to talk about things. Very, very smart crowd, much smarter than myself. I'm very proud of that community. So go ahead, click on that link, check out our Discord. We talk on chat often, and we also get on voice calls, and we have all kinds of events and things like that. So I'm looking forward to having you there. Yeah, that's the end of the video. I'll talk to you soon. Alrighty, peace.